Knock, knock. I'm gonna open the door anyway, make sure you're decent. It's me, your uncle, who lives in the attic. I figured in lieu of, hey, pay attention. I decided to take a break from the job hunt to talk to you about your first car. The job hunt's going fine. Just stop asking. Now, when I was a teenager in the 90s, the used car market, you could have a Toyota Tercel for a hot dog and a handshake. But today, everything is overpriced. Did your dad give you the talk yet? Did your dad give you the talk yet? Should I give you the talk? It's important that teenagers these days know what that they know what they're doing before they do it. So anyways, I was thinking of borrowing your mom's car and taking you to look at Kias. Oh, she won't mind. I hear they aren't as bad as when I was a teenager, when you could get a new one at 29% APR for the first 12 months, pending a credit check. What do you mean you don't have credit yet? When I was 13, I had 5 car loans taken out in my name, only 2 of which were mine. Did your dad give you the talk yet? I should give you the talk. It's not good to go out there without a hat on. It only takes one time to get pregnant. Come on, I'm your uncle. Let's go look at Kias. If bad vibes were sprinkles, I'd be enjoying one hell of a Sunday right now, because there's just something about a Kia that puts me on high alert. What are you plotting? You're bitter about something, and I'm going to end up paying the price, aren't I? You're an economy car, but you want to be a performance option. So you throw a turbo in there, and now what? I'm just supposed to forget that this is a car for dealerships that won't do test drives without a credit check? Is that what we're doing here? Is that what's hot in the streets? Why does popcorn always taste bad in dreams? I'm driving this car, and I want to feel something more than I do, because I can tell there's something here. It accelerates well. It handles well. It doesn't feel like a Kia, which is probably the nicest thing I can say about it. And yet, the Kia Forte GT is a sub-$30,000 car that feels like a bland alternative to the Honda Civic SI. So you can have all the style of a guy who's late for prom, but without all the baggage of the guy who busts too soon and then swears this never happens when this is literally all that ever happens. Of course, to prop up the Kia Forte GT while ragging on the Civic Si is the automotive equivalent of winding up your stone-throwing arm while you're getting new panels installed in your glass house. But there's still something manifestly uninspired and unchallenging about this aspirational econo box, even as I recognize that this also has a couple of qualities in its favor. So let's get down to it. Brian's off for the week. I'm the Roman, and this is another episode of Race to the Bottom.
Hi, it's Brian. The giveaway for the 2006 Pontiac GTO ends this Wednesday. Click on the link in the description and go to go.getentertowin.com/regularcars, buy a mug or a digital download, and someone's going to win the car that should have continued modern muscle cars in America. But thank you, Australia, for keeping this car alive deep into the 2000s. It's fantastic, it handles well, and these giveaways are helping us get to Australia in 2024. So click on the link in the description and go to go.getentertowin.com. Buy a mug, digital download, and someone's going to win this. Thank you so much for supporting Regular Car Reviews.
Kia Forte GT, the official car of people with no concept of temperature. Like, man, it's so hot, it's gotta be like 92 or something. Dude, it's 71 degrees and raining. Just because you have a functioning AC doesn't mean you have to use it all the time. So, Kias have a bizarre reputation. As an adolescent, I remember the ads going pretty hard on how well built the cars were, only for the subsequent decades to fail to bear that out, as Kia developed a reputation similar to that of a character in Logan's Run. They generally didn't make it to old age. And I should know. My dearly departed Kia Rio may have been a junker with no power steering or head unit, but inspections registered the car as mechanically sound, and I'd had all sorts of mechanical components replaced to keep her running before I even really took her in. It was at fewer than 132,000 miles, for crying out loud. Yet within a year, the engine was on its last legs and the transmission blew out, and that was pretty much the end of that. I'd like to hope the experience would have taught me a lesson, but I'm not really sure it did, because here I am giving a Kia another chance, which is fair. You can't really blame an entire company just for one bad experience you had with one product. And despite being a box of rats, my buddy's Kia Spectra was alright. But the more I think about it, the more I wonder if there's some sort of truth to the idea that Kias aren't very long for this world. There's an old proverb that goes something to the effect of, if the devil can't come himself, he'll send an old man. The idea is that the older you get, the more experience you have, which makes you more cunning, and therefore more untrustworthy. It's kind of a weird idea that smacks of ageism, but it was pre-industrial Europe, and if you made it past 25, you were probably viewed as having made some sort of pact with the devil anyway. But in the case of Kia, you tend to have the opposite problem. The devil will send you a young Kia because its shine and gloss and sport mode performance will blind you to a lifespan that Consumer Reports would have you believe is shorter than that of the average gerbil. An elderly Kia conveys a form of trust because it's made it past 200,000 miles or whatever. It's earned those miles, right? Those are proven miles. But what has a new Kia done to earn consumer trust when the word out on the street is that these things fail at embarrassingly low mileage? The horror story is that these transmissions are only good for 100,000 miles, which is precisely how long the warranty lasts unless you're willing to own this for 10 years but never drive it anywhere. But isn't that a CVT problem in general rather than one specific to Kia? It just never came across to me as particularly reliable transmissions, although that could just be my own ignorance, I don't know. Now, this has the 7-speed DCT matched to a 1.6-liter Turbo Gamma 2 engine, making 201 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque. And for all the bad rap, this transmission is a surprising blessing in the curves. I love the road feel. I love the handling. I love how stiff the suspension is at times and how it seems to adjust for my style of driving, which I guess is indicated by the various driving modes. I kept it in sport most of the time just because that's the only way you can really get the full experience. Otherwise, it's all just potential, and potential is wasted energy anyway. I swear I could practically feel every pebble in the road, and it's a weird experience to have that sense that the car really is just another extension of your body in some weird way, but it's a feeling I really haven't had in a while, or at least I haven't had it to such an extent that I would notice it. That's kind of sad, isn't it? But for as much of a blessing as this is in the curves, it's a downright nightmare at lower speeds. Even with the Sport Tune suspension, this thing feels rickety when you aren't going highway fast, which makes neighborhood driving a pain because it has that familiar Kia Rio feeling of a car that could, at any moment, decide to just stop working. It's nerve-wracking in a way that reminds me unfavorably of the Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo, the first car I reviewed for Race to the Bottom and the one that's still leading. Just, so bad. And look, I know you shouldn't hold this to performance standards, and maybe that's not precisely what Kia wants you to do anyway. But then, why does this exist if not to capture a market of people who are new to the workforce but haven't aged out of being on their parents' health insurance yet? Kia wants you to look at this and see something that's cheaper, faster, and exactly 1 horsepower stronger than the Civic SI, and a more modest appearance. But the thing is, it's not that much cheaper, you know? It's basically $29,895 for the Civic versus $24,390 for this. And yes, $5,500 is a big difference, believe me, I know. But is it that much of a difference to the type of person in the market for a Civic SI in the first place? This is a sedan for playing McDonald's Monopoly and thinking maybe this is the day you'll get Mediterranean Avenue and win that Chevy Equinox, or get Reading Railroad and win free gas for a year just from buying some fries. For crying out loud, I'm from Reading, and I've never gotten Reading Railroad. As a child, all I wanted was to win McDonald's Monopoly, become locally famous, and live a life of luxury and grandeur because I was the kind of idiot who thought nobody ever won those games, so if I became the first, I'd make national news. But no, you went to the same senior high school as one of the most famous people under God's blue sky, so I could have won McDonald's Monopoly 47 times over and still never be as famous as the sweater from the All Too Well music video. We were in the Sound of Music together, for fuck's sake! And then I got sick before opening weekend and couldn't be in it anymore, which is just as well since I was playing an SS General and the optics of chasing Taylor Swift off stage while wearing that armband would have followed me down into a dark hole where outrage and critical thinking are in the same room but can't see each other, and so they thrash about in the unlit darkness, shouting into a yawning mass of cloistered shadows. Oh yeah, Kia. I'll say this for the Forte GT. It gets better fuel economy than most of the stuff I drive. It makes 27 miles per gallon city, 35 highway, 30 combined, and 40 Aiden. At least that's what Aiden gets in his best case scenarios. Aiden is a wonderful guy, and I had a lot of fun with him on this shoot. More fun than I had with his car, actually. Which is not to say I hated his car, but it doesn't come from a line with the greatest pedigree. You see, the Kia Forte was introduced in North America in 2008 as a replacement for the Kia Spectra, offering coupe, sedan, and hatchback options for people in the market for a tech-forward econo box that offered the familiarity of a car with the Kelley Blue Book value of a gently used Tonka truck. For its time, it was a car of a nebulous, perpetual yesterday, a never-ending appeal to simpler times and economical options for modest Americans who wanted a little bit of technology but not too much. And in that sense, you can almost see its appeal, especially now when it feels like Cash for Clunkers took out a lot of the cars that existed in the niche that the Forte fills. Across 3 generations, it developed more pointed refinements like flex steer, Android and Apple CarPlay, LED positioning lights with fog lights, and all that. By the time the 3rd gen models came around in 2019, it received the dual-clutch transmission, intelligent variable transmission, a tilt and telescopic steering column, and the tech safety features that have mostly become standardized on modern cars, like lane keeping assist and lane departure warning and forward collision avoidance. It was essentially an outdated car with a fresh coat of technology and a turbocharged engine to give the impression that this new generation really was a new generation. And for the amount of ragging I'm doing, it actually kind of was a new generation. It was different than its Forte forebears. But was it different enough to change perceptions of what the Forte actually was? Well, I will say that among the models that you could get, the GT is probably the best one if you actually want to enjoy driving it. It's got great acceleration. I really wasn't expecting this amount of oomph to it, you know? It illustrates that looks can be deceiving, and honestly, for as plain looking as the car is, I don't hate the styling. I kind of get it, even if it does have that sense of looking like almost every other car, and it still has that very dumb Kia logo that Kia's running with now, but I guess that's neither here nor there. I mean, the information I found online tends to bear out the idea that these modern Kia Fortes are much better than the ones that came before. When you read some of the consumer reports or go to car complaints, you'll see people saying to avoid 2010 at all costs and just stick with the 3rd gens, because even though the engine can be on the whiny side and some of the tech goes on the fritz, it's not as bad as reviews would make it out to be. But then, as with all reviews, impressions are purely anecdotal in nature. For every instance of amazing acceleration, you have issues like constant over-the-air updates, a small infotainment screen, and a rear reflector that doesn't really light up. And that's kind of the risk with buying new. It can often feel more like an open beta, particularly if you're getting the base model. Hell, the base model of the 3rd gen is practically notorious for having sound systems that either get overwhelmed by road noise or straight up stop working after 70,000 miles. Now, this is something Aiden thankfully avoided by upgrading to the GT2 package, which gets you heated and ventilated seats, Syntex seating material, LED lighted interior, and a Harman Kardon sound system to keep all that road noise from intruding too heavily onto your drive. The GT line is also the only car in the Forte lineup that gets a spare tire, at least from what I could find, and so, I don't know, that's something in its favor, right? And hey, Sport Mode is legitimately fun. I believe this shares an engine with the Sportage Hybrid and the Elantra N line, although please feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm off base. Either way, this handles with the moderate precision of a meal prepared at a franchise eatery. Outside of that initial burst of acceleration, there are no real surprises happening here. What you get is what you're going to get every time. It goes fast, but it's not blinding speed. It offers power up and down the range, but it's not going to blow your mind with its sport performance. And the technology is good when it works, but even then, it's not as if it offers anything a bunch of other car companies aren't also doing and probably doing better. This lane keep assist is really fritzy and wants you to just, I don't know, sometimes it sees the lines, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it wants you to move, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it kind of gets herky-jerky on the wheel. It's just very, I don't know if this is a Kia thing or if it's just a lane keep assist thing, but got on my nerves, it really did. I mean, it's good intentions, but we all know what brick they're laying on the path to hell. So how justifiable is a Kia Forte GT? Well, from reports I've read from multiple owners, the second-gen models have an issue that could have carried over into the third, depending on whom you're asking. Namely, that a bizarre engine knocking sound begins at around 100,000 miles, just long enough for the car to be off warranty. Some owners reported costs in excess of $4,000 to repair the problem, because you essentially need to replace the engine. This is coupled with rarer stories of transmissions needing to be changed within the first couple thousand miles. It just feels like the automotive equivalent of a bait and switch. This is what the salesman tries to talk you into when you say you want a Civic SI. Oh, we sold the Civic SI days ago. That wasn't supposed to still be up on the website, but how about this? It's a fine enough car if you don't have anything else to compare it to. Hell, for all my problems, I still found moments where I genuinely had fun with this car. Yeah, it's not ideal at lower speeds, but I don't know. If I owned this car, I think I'd be able to live with that. Hell, it almost made me accepting of paddle shifting, my mortal enemy. Well, my second mortal enemy after fitted sheets. Now that I'm officially in my post-Betty life and looking for a nice used Toyota Camry, I could find myself truly appreciating something artfully simplistic. The Forte GT has aspirations, but it also seems aware of its limitations. You see, Kia is a brand whose reputation sort of precedes her to the point where you almost can't get mad if a Kia you bought goes wonky. Because the onus is on us to have done any kind of research whatsoever before buying one. But then the stinger went a long way in shaping perception of Kia as a brand, reshaping it rather, so that it seemed cooler, it seemed younger, even as they changed to this stupid logo. I can't get over how dumb this logo is. It actually seemed like a brand halfway worth investing in. But that's the question. Can you really invest in Kia long term? Because I don't know that Kias have ever been long-term models. Are you ever going to have equity in a Kia when resale values are garbage? This isn't even just about saying you should get a Toyota Corolla or a Honda Civic. This is more about what you're going to do to make your Kia justify itself. Not pay for itself, because no car really will. Not with the car market being what it is, not with inflation and depreciation and all that financial jargon. But how will it justify itself in your life? Will it do what a comparable car would have done for less money and hassle? Because here's the thing, I'm not sure how many cars you can get that have handling as good as the GT, that have acceleration this good for this price point. Yes, I had moments of genuine surprise in here, but for the most part, the Kia Forte GT is achingly predictable. But then, some of the best things in the world are predictable. Fredo Corleone betrayed the family. We all knew what Michael was going to do, what Michael had to do. We wish he wouldn't, and hey, maybe the story could have thrown us a curveball and had him not do the thing we all knew he was going to do. But then he wouldn't have been Michael Corleone. He remained true to his character, even if it's maybe not what we wanted. And sometimes, what we want isn't always the best thing for the story anyway. Sometimes predictability makes the better story, and the Kia Forte GT is predictable as hell. I think when you're getting a Forte GT, you get something that, while not as comprehensive as its competitors, is something that you get for a cheaper price that can still give you the same experience without the same cost. Okay, maybe not the same experience, but a similar experience. It's a different taste. It's like playing Skyrim for the 100th time because Starfield costs too much money. If you can live with having what half of the full experience really feels like, then I could imagine you'll be perfectly satisfied with the Kia Forte GT, even as I recognize that it feels less like it's good because it's good and more like it's good because it's new. This thing still hasn't hit 11,000 miles. Aiden's only had it for about a year, which is sort of not what I was expecting, despite the fact that it is a 2023 model. But then I had a feeling deep in my bones that this car would be pretentious and loathsome. And yet, it's no better nor worse than a book full of simple facts. Like the sky being blue, like there being 7 days in a week. There's an odd sort of empathy to Kia as a brand, that it's trying to understand where you're coming from. It's trying to meet your needs, even if it doesn't always meet those needs in the way you want them met. Even if it fails to truly meet those needs at all, really. But Kia is a brand that has always tried, through diligence and, empathy. Because we've lost better automakers than Kia to mismanagement, yet here is this weird little company making aspirational performance econo boxes and mid-range electric vehicles, and trying to ride trends like they're on the good ship Lollipop, and I find myself wondering why we can't all have that kind of perseverance, you know? Because there has got to be a lining cresting the edges of these clouds, a silver streak glinting against a hidden sun to say that something brighter is coming. Some of us go through life like wooden dolls, but we all have the capacity for growth through understanding, just like Kia does. Not through something cynical like knowing your audience, but through something more empathetic like knowing other people, knowing yourself. Empathy is the blue fairy that's gonna turn all us Pinocchios into real boys. It's not something you have to run from. It's okay and even helpful to step inside other people's shoes. I guess it's what I'm trying to do with this, to try to understand why people choose the cars they do. Because sometimes I don't understand. Like, I don't really get it with this GT, even as I understand that it does have some positive qualities to it. But ultimately, I just don't get it. But I'm trying to. I don't get Kia's marketing or development approach, but I'm trying. Is the Kia Forte GT a car worth going out of your way to drive? Not if you're looking for an enthusiast experience, but I would argue that expecting one is the wrong approach. The road to fulfillment runs through the turnpike of expectations, and you're the one who decides how high or how low the toll is. Sure, I expected better, and maybe that's my mistake. I saw the letters GT and got overexcited. But I still can't say the Forte GT underdelivered to the point that it's an actively bad car. No, this one lands firmly in the middle. I still think I prefer the Escape, but this will make a nice number 2, followed by the Hyundai Tucson, and the car that is still yet to be bottomed, the very first car reviewed for Race to the Bottom, the Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo. It's like the Roman Reigns of this series, just gonna be champ forever, it seems. That is, unless you think you have the car that can win the Race to the Bottom. If so, just send an email to regularcarstheroman@gmail.com with your name and location. At this time, all entrants must be willing to travel out to meet us in southeastern Pennsylvania. But if that sounds all right to you, submit your car to regularcarstheroman@gmail.com. I'd like to thank Aiden for submitting his car and contributing to such a wonderful film shoot. And I'd like to thank each of you for watching. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.